Another edition of Behind the Lines presented by TheLines.com and BetMGM Sportsbook. I'm Eli Hershkovich, joined as always by Christian Cipollini, training manager at BetMGM. Christian, we don't want to reminisce over Monday Night Football too much, but I'm assuming the Chargers losing outright to the Ravens, the majority of the bets and money coming in on Baltimore throughout the week and before kickoff, especially with them being a pretty public favorite. Not a great result for BetMGM.
No, not at all. We were definitely rooting for the Chargers in that one. Just one of those didn't go our way. Primetime one's not going our way is usually not good for the books, so didn't like it.
Lamar Jackson having that standout performance against the Chargers, second shortest odds to win NFL MVP, behind Josh Allen, the Bills' starting quarterback, at plus 150, and the Eagles' running back, Saquon Barkley, at plus 400. Jackson, by the way, with that win over the Chargers on Monday night, now 20-5 straight up, an 80% hit rate in night games, the best winning percentage for any quarterback since the merger. And just going back to Saquon Barkley now, so Barkley behind Lamar Jackson has gone from a long shot to one of the favorites. He opened the season at 300-1, then 50-1 2 weeks ago, so bet down, adjusted down to 50-1, 20-1, entering the Sunday Night Football matchup against the Rams, now 4-1 to win NFL MVP and setting a franchise record with 255 rushing yards in a single game against the Rams and an NFL record as the first player in league history with 270-plus yard scores in the second half of any matchup. Between Allen, Jackson, and Barkley, who is the biggest liability for NFL MVP?
Saquon by far. You touched on it. He was 50-1 last week. He was 150-1 a couple weeks before that. We had a couple internal talks when we were talking about him, the fact that a few weeks back, that he might have been in this conversation had he not gotten so many touchdowns vultured from Jalen Hurts. But, I mean, the way he played last night, he's deservedly so in that MVP category just because of the way he's been playing. But, yeah, he's far and away our biggest liability at this point just because we did end up having a lot of people that were able to get bets on at 150-1 or 50-1, and that liability jumps up really quick at those prices.
We always see tweets from BetMGM saying X amount of money, $50,000 bet coming in on this team and this primetime matchup. What about for Barkley to win MVP? How many significant bets, or have there been any that have popped up for you over the last few weeks or even ahead of the season?
Yeah, so while we didn't take a $50,000 bet, but we did have just a few $1,000 bet or $1,500 bet, and that liability jumps up very, very fast. I believe there's one bettor that's on to win $250,000 over the course of a couple of weeks betting, decent amounts, 500, 1,000 at a time. So those liabilities jump up really, really fast when all it takes is a $500 or $1,000 bet to rack up a couple 100,000 in liability.
If you haven't signed up for BetMGM Sportsbook, by the way, you can get up to $1,500 in bonus bets if your first bet does not win, plus a $50 bonus bet, win or lose. And that promo code stated at the beginning of this podcast here on YouTube for Behind the Lines. But let's get into Thanksgiving. A few matchups of note, starting off with the early game, Bears at Lions Chicago against the Super Bowl betting favorite. Lions minus 10 on the point spread. Detroit sitting in an NFL best 9-2 ATS. Then after that, you have the Cowboys 4-point favorites against the Giants. And then on Thursday Night Football, essentially the finale, the dessert on Thanksgiving, Packers laying 3 against the Dolphins. We've seen that number tick back and forth between the key number of a field goal and 3.5. Between those three games, which handle regarding the point spread is most lopsided, whether it's bets and money or both?
Well, if you've been listening for the past couple of weeks, you should probably know the answer to this one, and it is it's the Lions for sure. We take lopsided action on them every week, and so far that's the case as of now. Bears looked a little bit better this week, so hoping that could maybe neutralize it a bit, but I don't project it to be so. Hopefully the 10 points can maybe neutralize some of these bets, but I'd imagine we're going to be sitting about 80% of the money on the Lions.
Worth noting with Detroit, Jared Goff and Dan Campbell 0-3 straight up on Thanksgiving, 2-1 against the spread. but usually not this big of a favorite. They were around a 7-8 point favorite against a banged up Packers team last season on Thanksgiving, and Green Bay went into Detroit and won that game, sprung their late season run to get into the playoffs. But if Detroit sticks around as a 10-point favorite, or even so, it would be the biggest Thanksgiving spread in favor of the Lions since 1968, when they closed as 12-point favorites against the Eagles. But conversely, if the Bears pull off the outright road upset, it would be tied for the biggest Thanksgiving upset since the Dolphins over the Packers as 10-point dogs. It would be Miami being the 10-point underdog back in 1993. So we touched on the point spread. What about for the total? Which of those three games is most lopsided with the handle regarding the over-under?
Yeah, that one will be the Dolphins-Packers game. We see an overaction. Dolphins have been scoring a lot of points since Tua's been back. The Packers have a lot of weapons as well. So it's a pretty high total at 47, but so far that's the one we've definitely seen the most overaction on.
Is that surprising to you? Now, I know maybe not so much because of Miami's recent offensive success, but we've touched on it on previous podcasts, and over the last few years, Miami has really struggled outside. Going from the warm weather in Miami, South Florida, to playing in cold conditions in Green Bay. It's supposed to be around 30 degrees, winds gusts around 7 to 10 miles per hour. Tua in 40 degrees or lower in terms of the temperatures. 0-4 straight up and 1-3 against the spread, failing to cover the point spread by an average of 18 points per game. So wrapping it up with the Thanksgiving card, I'm assuming lopsided, or you expect it to be lopsided with the point spread, but maybe we'll see some under money coming in over the next couple days.
Yeah, I mean, those are all good points that I'm sure probably some people haven't really picked up on, the fact that Miami is always significantly worse when they go to colder weather. It's probably why this game is 47 and there's a 48.5 in Chicago and Detroit, but it's probably more along the lines of just people probably think that each team could score a lot of points in that game, where there's probably a few people that don't really expect the Bears to score a lot of points, which, is just causing us not to get as many over bets in that game. And then we haven't even touched on the Giants-Cowboys game. That's a very low point total, and we haven't seen much action really at all on either side of that at this point, but it'll be on the under when it eventually comes in, because not expecting a lot of points in that one.
Yeah, lowest total of the week with New York and Dallas for NFL Week 13 odds. But I'm sure there will be Cowboys and Lions parlays, moneyline parlays stacking up ahead of kickoff on Thursday. And just a note for bettors out there, not that trends are the end-all be-all. As I like to say, trends are trends until they're not. But the Lions and Cowboys haven't gone 2-0 straight up and against the spread. So they haven't both won outright nor covered on Thanksgiving since 1994. So if you want to go with a money line parlay with the first two games, first two favorites on the board on Thanksgiving, hasn't been profitable over the last couple of decades. But let's shift over to Black Friday. We have the Chiefs juiced minus 12.5-point favorite against the Raiders. Total of 42.5. Kansas City in a similar spot to last year, taking on the Raiders on Christmas in 2023. And they lost outright to Las Vegas as a double-digit home favorite. And that correlates with the Chiefs' trend of when they're favored by 6 points or more. Patrick Mahomes in Kansas City this season, 6-0 straight up, 0-5-1 ATS, and that includes their win over the Panthers on Sunday, hitting a walk-off field goal. I swear we're living in a simulation, Christian, with Kansas City failing to cover, but winning in the waning seconds of their games, being favored by around a full touchdown or a little bit below it regarding Sunday's game against the Panthers. But are you expecting Las Vegas, with that being said, to be a pretty big need come Friday?
Yeah, I think it still will be a need, but I was glad you did touch on the fact that the Chiefs had not been covering these big spread games at all. Even going back into last season, they were not covering at a high rate either. And because it's been so long of this happening, not only the sharps, but the public as well is starting to pick up on that trend. Over the last couple of weeks, we have not seen the usual action that we tend to see on the Chiefs. Usually the two-time Super Bowl defending champs that are 10-1 will see 80-90% of our action on one side, and we haven't seen that. It's been lower. I mean, it's still more Chiefs money, but it's more like 55-60% as opposed to like a very overwhelming side. And that's kind of what we're seeing at this point. It's about 60% on the Chiefs. I think that's probably where we'll end up, just because the Raiders are not a team that you really, really want to bet on. But yeah, the Chiefs just have not been covering these double-digit spreads.
Yeah, it's interesting, just juxtaposed with a two-time defending Super Bowl champion like the Patriots in the early 2000s in this era. They were continuing to beat the market's expectations week over week when the market would adjust in terms of the point spread not being big enough. Detroit, oddly enough, despite losing in the NFC title game, they're not the defending Super Bowl champion. They're more so of that ilk, a team that continues to defy the market's expectations, while Kansas City can't really get past it, especially last week against the Panthers and a few weeks ago against the Bucs on Monday Night Football when those point spreads were hanging around a touchdown, or in the Week 12 case against Carolina over double digits.
Yeah, I mean, we've probably touched on it a few times. I think the Lions are covering 9-2 this season, so it's basically a complete opposite of what the Chiefs have been. And it has been a weird year for the books because almost every week over the past 5-10 years, it's always been expect we're going to be rooting against the Chiefs and the Cowboys, and this is a year where we're rooting for them in a lot of cases. So it's definitely a bit odd.
As you all know by now, we've teamed up with BetMGM this season. We'll be using BetMGM lines to make all of our picks, and we'll have special offers for our listeners each week. If you haven't signed up with BetMGM yet, use promo code THELINES, that's the lines one word, and you will get up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. Here's how it works. Download the BetMGM app and sign up using bonus code THELINES. Deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game. You'll then receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets if your first bet loses. Just make sure to use bonus code THELINES when you sign up. See BetMGM.com for terms. 21 plus only. U.S. promotional offers not available in New York, Nevada, Ontario, or Puerto Rico. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Available in the U.S. Call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369 in New York. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP in Arizona, 1-800-327-5050 in Massachusetts, 1-800-BETS-OFF in Iowa, and 1-800-981-0023 in Puerto Rico. First bet offer for new customers only, subject to eligibility requirements. Rewards are non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire within 7 days. In partnership with Kansas Crossing Casino and Hotel. Don't forget, if you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use bonus code THELINES and get your $1,500 first bet offer today. And it's an odd situation at quarterback for Las Vegas, with that being an unknown going into the game against the Kansas City Chiefs. Aiden O'Connell possibly returning from a fractured thumb injury on his third hand. And this is all because Gardner Minshew was out for the rest of the season after getting hurt against the Broncos on Sunday. Also could be Desmond Ridder if O'Connell isn't back. O'Connell did start for Las Vegas last year on Christmas against Kansas City when the Raiders pulled off that upset win as double-digit road underdogs. Ridder, though, you go back to the Sunday matchup against the Broncos, sacked in a goal-to-go situation, and that helped Denver bettors cover the 5.5, 6-point spread, with Denver being favored on the road in Sin City. Probably not a great result for you, and hasn't been a great season for the Raiders. 4-7 ATS this season. But let's quickly take a look at player props for this game. As we're recording this here a couple days in advance of the Thanksgiving and Black Friday matchups, Patrick Mahomes, his player props, the only one listed at BetMGM so far. He's tied with Jordan Love for the second most picks this season, but even money to throw an interception against the Raiders on Friday. Anything stand out with the Mahomes player props so far?
Yeah, still waiting on player props with a lot of the injury news and just trying to figure out who on the Raiders is going to end up playing. Yeah, as of right now, we are still taking overs in his passing yards, passing touchdowns. I have seen a couple bets on his, to throw a pick, but nothing significant at the moment. So I do probably expect a lot of, still Mahomes overs coming in, even though they haven't been covering at this rate. He hasn't really been scoring at like the rates he usually does, we still just end up with overs on those. So I'm sure that'll continue.
What about overall to wrap up the holiday slate? Any player prop action that the Bucks are going to be rooting against for any of the Thanksgiving games, whether it's Bears, Lions, Cowboys, Giants, or Packers, Dolphins?
Yeah, so pretty much you name it on the Lions. We're going to want Gibbs to go under pretty much all of his potential props, St. Brown as well. Gibbs, Montgomery, St. Brown, all touchdown scorer bets that they're anytime touchdowns. We've already taken a good amount of bets on those. So yeah, I mean, it's a lot of the Lions. I haven't seen too much in the Cowboys-Giants game. I wouldn't expect a lot of props. I'm sure there's some sneaky ones in there, but nothing that stood out to me as of yet.
Crazy looking at the anytime touchdown odds for Bears Lions with Montgomery and Gibbs, both minus 150 or higher to score in that game. And when you have a total of 48, it makes sense. I'm curious to see how that total fluctuates over the rest of the week. But nonetheless, anytime touchdown odds certainly in favor of Detroit to put up some points, at least on their side of the table in that game. But over to the Sunday slate, Christian, looking at NFL Week 13, early afternoon games, the 6-5 Falcons, 1.5-point home dogs against the Chargers. Atlanta coming off the bye, LA losing outright to Baltimore on Monday Night Football, as we mentioned, with the Ravens covering that point spread. A total of 47.5 in this game. The Chargers going cross country on a short week after nearly getting outgained 2 yards per play against the Ravens. And then you go back to the Monday Night Football matchup. I'm sure Chargers bettors are not feeling too good. Queasy stomach here on Tuesday or whenever they're watching this week, listening to Behind the Lines after Quentin Johnson dropped 3 fourth quarter potential receptions and 1 on third down. That was a huge, costly mistake with the Chargers trailing by a score. Where do you see the early action for this game? I know it's less than 24 hours after Chargers Falcons, but one of the more intriguing point spreads of the week, just with Atlanta being in first place in the NFC South and the market higher on LA seemingly despite failing to live up or defy the market's expectations against a team that was garnering their fair share of bets in Baltimore on Monday night.
Yeah, I expected that if the Chargers won this game, this spread was going to go a little bit more towards them. I'm actually kind of surprised that so far it hasn't moved that much towards the Falcons, because as of our early action has been slightly more to the Falcons, probably about 65% on the Falcons. And like I've mentioned a few times, looking at last week's games, it really does tend to play into what the action that we take the next week is. So, the fact that they didn't look great, the drops were big, even though they were kind of able to move the ball sometimes. They had the Dobbins injury. After that, I guess there was not a lot of people that wanted to come wake up this morning and go ahead and bet on that team, especially with Atlanta coming off a bye. As of now, it's been a little bit more Falcons.
Yeah, Falcons coming off back-to-back losses too. Last time out, getting blown out in Denver in Week 11. So situationally, good spot for the Falcons to bounce back. But Christian, among the games we discussed so far, whether it's Thanksgiving, Black Friday, or anything on the board, Sunday, even Monday Night Football with the Browns and Broncos, Sunday night, we don't know who's starting at quarterback for San Francisco with the 49ers. Brock Purdy could be back. That's up in the air after San Francisco got blown out in Green Bay, taking on the Bills as 7-point dogs. What stands out to you that you either have bet or are looking to bet in NFL Week 13?
Yeah, the one I like is actually the one we just mentioned for those reasons that we mentioned. I know Atlanta got absolutely their doors blown off by the Broncos 2 weeks ago, but coming off a bye, I do think they are a pretty solid team here at home, coming off a short week Chargers. So I do like them as home dogs. I like a money line, but 1.5 if you want to be safe there is good too. The other one that I liked was a little bit of the opposite. It's I like the Seahawks on the road against the Jets. Really just fading the Jets at this point. I know that they're coming off a bye and now home dogs, which is the complete opposite of what I said. But I do like the Seahawks team, and I think they've been significantly better with DK in the lineup. They didn't look too good in the middle of the season when he was out, but they looked much better with him, and that opens up Smith and Jigba. That's really what their entire offense goes around. So sticking with them and fading the Jets is my preference here.
Yeah, I had Seattle against the Cardinals on Sunday. Geno Smith continues to terrify me with second half interceptions, whether it was against the Rams before the bye, 49ers last week, or against the Cardinals, a pick that Seattle easily could have put the game out of reach in the second half. But his decision-making has been costly to an extent, but Seattle has overcome it, not only with Metcalf being back and that aiding their offense in terms of explosive plays, but defensively, Mike McDonald has really turned around that defense. On the note of Seahawks-Jets, though, I wanted to ask, because this line has dipped a little bit. Not that it's a key number with it being under a field goal throughout the week in the early goings, but Seattle was a 2.5-point favorite, now down to 2 at BetMGM, total of 41.5 with New York coming off the bye, as you mentioned. Have there been any bigger bets that have come in on the Jets so far?
No, we haven't taken anything bigger yet. Usually our early action, we don't tend to take big bets early on. We usually wait for later in the week. And especially, this week there's been a lot of question marks around the Jets. There was rumors that Rodgers potentially wouldn't play. He squashed those pretty quickly. So those kind of things would significantly move the line. So that's why we try to avoid to take big bets early in the week when we don't really have all the information yet. But yeah, so nothing that's really moved us too much. We were actually at Seattle minus 1.5 for a little bit, and now we're up to 2. So we've taken a little bit more Seattle action so far at this point.
Well, in terms of bigger bets, I'm sure you guys are going to be rooting against the Eagles and hoping for a Ravens blowout there. At least in terms of the long-term outlook, we'll see what the handle is looking like for Baltimore and Philly come Sunday in terms of Baltimore being a 3-point home favorite, total of 51, and Philly plus 130 on the money line. But really fun NFL Week 13 discussion with Christian Cipollini for BetMGM Sportsbook Trading Manager with BetMGM. And remember, you could sign up with BetMGM Sportsbook, get those $1,500 in bonus bet if your first bet loses, and another extra $50 bonus bet, win or lose, with your first wager with promo code THELINES, YT50. That's the lines, YT50, one word. So really appreciate the time, Christian, and good luck to you with those 2 NFL bets on Thanksgiving and the rest of the slate.
Yeah, let's hope it pans out. Good luck to everyone else this week as well.
Thanks for watching and listening to this edition of Behind the Lines, presented by BetMGM and TheLines.com. So long, everybody, and good luck with your NFL Week 13 picks.